The observation deck of the Galactic Endurance Committee's flagship hummed with anxious energy as representatives from 47 species gathered to witness what many considered an inevitable failure. Elio Coraline, the human representative, stood in the preparation chamber, stretching his shoulders with casual indifference while technicians from 3 different worlds triple-checked the environmental seals. "The trial will commence in 10 minutes, announced Zixthor, the Catharian overseer whose crystalline body refracted the station's lights into dancing patterns across the walls. His voice carried the weight of centuries of tradition. "Participant, Coraline, do you wish to reconsider? No species has ever completed the full 24 hours. Withdrawal carries no shame." Elio rolled his neck, producing a series of pops that made several nearby aliens recoil. "I'm good, thanks. Let's get this started." The endurance trial had existed for millennia, designed to test the absolute limits of biological resilience. It cycled through environments that would challenge every known form of sentient life: extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, crushing gravity, sensory deprivation, and psychological stress. The current record holder, Avrelnath Heavy Worlder, had lasted 18 hours and 42 minutes before their redundant organ systems finally collapsed. Humanity's application to join the galactic community had been met with polite skepticism. They were young, their technology derivative, their biology unremarkable. The committee had agreed to test them, expecting a quick demonstration of human limitations followed by the standard consolation speech about potential for future membership. The trial chamber sealed with a hiss that reverberated through Elio's bones. The first phase began immediately, a temperature drop that would freeze ammonia. His suit's heating elements activated, but they were deliberately limited, designed only to prevent death, not comfort. Through the reinforced windows, dozens of alien eyes watched his vitals on holographic displays. Elio had done his homework. He knew the Srathi representative had lasted 4 hours before hypothermia shut down their cold-blooded metabolism. He knew the Polixen had made it to 8 hours before their chitinous exoskeleton cracked under alternating thermal stress. He settled into a rhythm, controlling his breathing, moving just enough to maintain circulation. 6 hours in, the chamber shifted to crushing heat, temperatures that would liquefy lead. Sweat poured from every pore as his suit switched to minimal cooling. The observation deck had quieted. Several species who'd already retired from watching had returned, alerted by monitoring stations that the human was still conscious, still moving. "Impossible," whispered Velkara, the Delphinian medical observer. Her tentacles coiled with agitation as she studied the readouts. His core temperature should have triggered cascade failure. How is his brain still functioning? Zixthor's crystalline form darkened with concern. Humans possess an unusually efficient cooling system, but even so. Hour 12 brought the gravity shift. The chamber's artificial gravity increased to 7 times standard, enough to crush most bipedal species flat. Elio dropped to his hands and knees, then to his belly, spreading his weight. Every breath was labor. His muscles screamed. But he'd trained for this, remembered the stories of fighter pilots pulling 9 Gs, of athletes pushing through walls of pain that should have stopped them. He thought of Amelia Earhart disappearing into the Pacific still flying. Of Shackleton crossing Antarctic ice, dragging his men home. Of the nameless humans who'd climbed mountains, crossed deserts, and sailed endless seas simply because they were there. Humanity didn't quit. Not when it mattered. The psychological phase began at hour 16. Isolation. Darkness. Then hallucinations induced by carefully calibrated neural stimulators, every species' specific nightmares projected directly into the mind. Elio saw Earth burning, saw his family dissolving to ash, heard screams that couldn't possibly be real. He knew they weren't real. He repeated it like a mantra, anchoring himself to the cold metal floor, to the pain in his muscles, to the very human stubbornness that refused to break. Hour 20 arrived. The observation deck was now packed. Word had spread through the station. The human was still going. Science teams from a dozen species scrambled to explain it, poring over human biological data, searching for the hidden advantage, the secret modification, the trick. There was no trick. Just evolution on a death world that killed the weak, natural selection that favored the survivors, and a cultural inheritance that celebrated endurance above almost all other virtues. The final 4 hours cycled through every previous challenge in rapid succession. Temperature swings, gravity fluctuations, toxic gas that his suit's filters strained to neutralize, sonic frequencies designed to rupture organs. Elio endured. His body wanted to quit. Every cell screamed for rest, but his mind, that strange, stubborn human consciousness that could override survival instincts in pursuit of goals, kept him moving. When the 24-hour mark arrived and the chamber, finally pressurized to normal conditions, Elio stood on shaking legs. The door opened. Zixthor stood there, his crystalline body pulsing with colors that indicated profound confusion. "You completed it," the overseer said, his translator struggling to convey his astonishment. "Participant Coraline, on behalf of the galactic community, I extend—" "Hey," Elio interrupted, bracing himself against the doorframe, grinning despite his exhaustion. "That was pretty intense. Good warm-up." He paused, looking directly at Zixthor with eyes that still held alertness despite everything. "So when do we start round 2? The observation deck erupted into chaos. Translator systems overloaded, trying to process 47 different species expressions of shock. Zixthor's crystalline form went completely transparent, a Catharian stress response not seen in recorded history. "Round 2? The overseer finally managed. "Yeah," Elio said, stretching his arms above his head, his joints popping like gunfire. "I mean, that was rough, don't get me wrong. But I've had harder days back home. Marathon training, you know. So if this is the test for basic membership, I'm curious what you've got for advanced standing." Velkara's medical scanner fell from her tentacles, clattering on the deck. "Advanced standing requires. There is no second trial. No one has ever." Elio shrugged. "First time for everything." He looked around at the assembled representatives, at their expressions of disbelief, fear, and dawning realization. "So, are we doing this or what? I cleared my schedule for the week." In the silence that followed, representatives from 47 species confronted an uncomfortable truth. They hadn't tested humanity's limits. They'd only introduced themselves to humanity's baseline. And somewhere in the back of their collective consciousness, an ancient prey instinct whispered a warning about what kind of species evolves to find 24 hours of systematic torture merely adequate. Zixthor's crystals slowly regained their color as he processed the implications. Humanity's application to the galactic community was no longer a question of if, but of what to do with a species that redefined the meaning of endurance itself. "There will be no second round," the overseer said quietly. "Welcome to the galactic community, Elio Coraline. Please, help yourself to refreshments. And rest. For all our sakes, please rest." Elio grinned. "Sure thing. Got any coffee?"